Our movie today is inspired by a true story, and it begins with Eric Kernan Jr. at a boxing match gathering all the information he can for his next article. Meanwhile, outside in an alley, a group of drunk young men were making fun of a homeless man who calls himself Champ and claims to be the boxer Bob Satterfield, number 3 in the world. While on his way back to his car, Eric sees what the drunk men are doing to Champ and he stops them. As they leave, Champ tells Eric who he is. Eric gives him money, which Champ is really happy about. He eventually realizes that Champ was once a famous boxer and that many thought he had already passed away. The next day at his office, Eric's boss, Ralph Metz, tells him that his editorial piece is bland and not inspiring and that he can do better, especially since his father is Eric Kernan Sr., a renowned sportscaster, which greatly annoyed Eric, as he doesn't want to ever be compared to his recently deceased father. Now, at a job interview with Bing Whitley for a weekly magazine as a sports writer, Eric suggested the idea of writing Champ's story and calling it Resurrecting the Champ. This catches Bing's attention and they make a deal that if they like his piece, they'll hire him. Eric goes to get help from Polly, a research assistant, and makes sure that everything will be kept a secret, as Metz can never know this. Polly agrees to help him. Later that night, he's hanging out with his 6-year-old son, Teddy, whom he shares with Joyce. He and Joyce both work together at the Denver Times, but they're separated. Teddy seems to be into sports, thinking Eric is friends with famous athletes. After dinner with Joyce and Teddy, and also telling him about writing a story about Champ, he goes back to the alley where he last saw him and talks to him about his project. But Champ isn't keen on that idea. Eric gives him his card in case he decides to want to talk later about his story. Champ recognizes his name, and he admits who his father is. Champ tells him about how Eric's dad ruined his Christmas back in 1953 when he called him a disappointment. So the next day, Eric is at another fight for his next article, and he brings Champ with him. While watching the match, Champ predicts who will win the fight. After he predicted correctly, Eric asks him how he knew. So the Champ gives him his secret, which impresses Eric. Later that night, Eric convinces Champ to do the story when he tells him that he may lose his job. So Champ begins telling him his story, starting out with how his father used to beat him when he was a kid, giving him a huge scar on his back. When he gets home, he puts on his dad's report from Christmas 1953 to know more about Champ, and he writes his article, being inspired by how Champ saw that match. In the office the next day, he earns praise from his colleagues and even Metz. Later on, he meets up with Champ again, showing him the first page of the newspaper, and they go to eat dinner in a homeless shelter. They talk more about Champ's life before. Eric begins recording while Champ tells a story about how he had a fight with Ezzard Charles and lost in a knockout. He said he moved to Sioux City and worked as a stable boy, but his employer figured out who he was and made him go back into boxing, where he traveled around again, as his boss would make him fight in non-sanctioned boxing matches. But he's fighting all the time now, getting extremely exhausted. In one fight, he gets knocked out with his opponent damaging his vision. He wasn't able to fight after that, and his boss kept all the money they earned from the matches. He tells Eric that he hitched his way back to Denver. In our next scene, Polly gives Eric a folder with all the information she dug up about Champ, which is not a lot. Then she also gives him a tape of one of his fights. Eric watches it with Joyce, telling him that the Champ is the one with the huge scar on his back. Eric goes to Champ and finds him beaten all up. He feels bad for him, so he takes him into a shop where he can watch the tape. As Champ watches, he's clearly in awe, remembering the good old days, and it also makes Eric happy to see him like that. Then Champ walks out of the store and Eric follows, thinking that Champ may have not liked it, and apologizes. But Champ asks him if he has a kid, and Eric says yeah. Champ tells him that he hopes someday his son will do something like what he did for Champ today. When Champ's about to leave, Eric tells him that he needs more for his story. So they drive down a street and stop across this house. Champ tells him that his second wife, Betty, lives there. She kicked him out a long time ago. Eric tells him about his wife, Joyce, whom he's now separated from. The two end up talking about their sons, and Champ tells Eric that his son, Bob Jr., who he shares with his first wife, Lona, tells everybody that he's dead. Champ says that his son is angry at him because he left him and his mom. In the next scene, we have Eric and Teddy out to lunch, and when they're about to leave, football player John Elway arrives. Teddy, thinking his dad is friends with the athlete as he claims to be, asks if they could go over and meet him. Eric tells him that it's rude, but Teddy runs to John and talks to him, and Eric pretends they're friends as he tries to leave as quickly as they can. Outside, Eric lets his son get into the car, and Teddy tells him that he has famous friends but he never meets any of them. So they head to the park and hang out with Champ, which clearly makes Teddy happy. Back in the office, Polly gives Eric more information for his story. She sets up a meeting with LaMotta, the last living opponent that Champ had. She also gives him Bob Jr.'s number, and Eric calls him, telling him that he needs to ask questions about Champ, but Bob Jr. gets mad and hangs up the phone. Bing then calls Eric and introduces him to Fred Roselle, who tells Eric that he was floored when he heard about Eric's story about Satterfield. He offers Eric to put that story on the front page of the magazine, but demands for it to get done by Monday. Eric agrees and goes with a photographer to see Champ to get photos for the magazine. He also calls LaMotta and hands the phone over to Champ, which makes Bob happy. In the next scene, the magazine's already published with Champ's story on the front page. A lot of people loved it, and many editorial companies are impressed with Eric, except Metz, who's pissed that Eric gave that story to another publisher instead of him. Eric gets a call from Andrea Flack from Showtime, who offers him a job at a sports event in Las Vegas. Later that evening, Eric celebrates with Bing and Polly, and while he and Polly dance, we can see that she likes him. But Eric goes and calls Joyce to come out and celebrate with him. In the morning, Eric gets a call from Ike Epstein and meets up with him. Ike tells him that Satterfield had been dead for 20 years, so Eric meets up with Champ and asks him for an ID just to prove that he says who he is, but Champ has no ID on him. Eric goes back to Ike and shows him the tape of Champ's fight, before Ike tells him that he has to watch the match with Kincaid. He also tells Eric that he was in every single one of Champ's fights before. Eric mentions that he knows it's Champ because of the scar, and Ike corrects him that the one with the scar is Kincaid and not Champ. This revelation makes Eric worried, so he talks to Joyce about it and how he can fix things. Joyce tells him that he must behave as if Teddy's always watching him. In the next scene, Eric's at Vegas for that Showtime job, and he's interviewing the winner of the match. Joyce and Teddy watch him on the TV. After the match, Flack talks with Eric and offers him a full-time job, but Eric doesn't know if he wants to take it yet. He goes to Joyce's house and he tells her that he'll tell Bing about the mix-up between Satterfield and Kincaid, which Joyce supports as it's the right thing to do. But when he gets to the office in the morning, Bing is there with Metz. Bob Jr. and his lawyer are also there, telling Eric that they're gonna sue him for the article. Metz goes to talk to him and tells him that he has to be in the settlement meeting and that they'll have to talk to Joyce as well to make sure that she isn't involved. Later, Eric meets up with Champ and gives him money from the people who donated. Then he confronts him about impersonating Satterfield, which Champ basically admits to. Eric gets mad and gets into a fight with Champ but gets knocked out. At the hospital, Joyce enters the room and finds Eric angrily talking to the police. She tells the police to get a statement when Eric is thinking clearly. As the cops leave, Joyce knocks some sense into him, telling him that Champ never talked to any other reporter, as he's protecting him, and he should take the chance to forgive him. Eric takes it and has Champ released from jail. He drives him to Betty's house, and while they sit outside, they talk, with Champ telling Eric the truth. It was his employer in Sioux City who told him to impersonate Satterfield, and so he took the chance and enjoyed the feeling of being a winner. Eric meets up with Bob Jr. later that day for the settlement meeting, and Eric apologizes, and he tells Bob Jr. that he'll make things right by writing about the truth. Bob Jr. gives him that chance and tells him to tell the world that Bob Sr. was a good man and a good father. Eric also goes to his son and apologizes to him about everything, as he comes clean about lying. But meanwhile, that same drunk guy from before goes to Champ again. At first, Champ thought it was Mr. Marciano, whom he sparred with before, but he realizes it wasn't after he hit his head. Champ and the drunk fight each other, and Champ knocks him out. Unfortunately, Champ loses his life right after. Our movie ends with Champ's funeral, and Eric publishing the story, Resurrecting the Champ, truth be told about the truth about Champ. It's also revealed that Eric gets back together with Joyce, and they have a second child. The last scene shows Champ airboxing in his alley.